I recently took delivery of this beautiful Stryker boat and I've decided to make it my own. Although there is pedestal seats available from the manufacturer that mount to the floor, I've decided to go a slightly different route and have decided to mount the seats on the bench seats themselves and making them swivel. This is just all mocked up right now to see what I need. I'm going to try to use is a Lazy Susan bearing and some Dollarama, dollar store cutting boards, high density polyethylene to sandwich the bearing, and then possibly some waterproofing around that bearing as they do operate in a saltwater environment. So follow along as I progress with this build. First step in this process is to square off these cutting boards so that they're all the same size. I'm going to cut 4 at once on my bandsaw. My fence doesn't go far enough, so I'm going to have to freehand this. I have 4 cutting boards clamped together, and I'll cut down this line. After cutting and then rounding the corners off on these 4 pieces, I should have 4 pieces that are exactly the same. So a pair for each seat. The reason I went with square rather than a rounded piece is I want to be able to lock a corner down in any one of the 4 orientations for the seats. First step in this is to determine the placement of the seat holes, the 3 mounts on the bottom of the seat on the square of the seat mount. So I made a template out of cardboard and aligned it with a center line from corner to corner, and I have my 3 holes that are exactly the same distance on all corners. So this is the 45-degree seat angle I'm looking for. Just going to mark these with a punch and then drill the holes out. The 3 holes are drilled for 3/8 bolt. These are stainless because it's a saltwater environment, as mentioned before. So these 3 bolts will go in place. And everything lines up. I'm going to have to inset these a little bit so they don't interfere with the bearing. So I'm going to grind these a little flatter, maybe round them, and then put a well cut or a recessed hole that the bolts will bury into the plastic. Day 2 and a recovery from some missteps from yesterday. I initially drilled the 3 holes for the 3/8 bolts and then decided to recess a well afterwards. It doesn't work that well with Forstner bits once you've drilled the larger hole, as it wants to use its own self-centering bit there. So the success of any project is in how well you recover from your inevitable mistakes. I'm going to use a piece of 3/8 aluminum tubing that nicely fits the center bit of the Forstner bit, which will go through the 3/8 hole into a backing block of wood, hopefully being able to resize these wells so that it fits my socket. It allows me to tighten down these. We'll see how it works. First hole completed, and it actually worked pretty good. I don't want to show a failure. This is, after all, YouTube. So here's how it works. perfectly centered, and the socket will fit in there fine. So while I'm in confession mode, here's another misstep that I made on these seats. These are lawnmower seats from Princess Auto, and the 3 screw mounts, one is flush and 2 are protruding from the shell with little locks, and when you put pressure on them they just pop back into the shell, so they need a spacer. So I just cut a couple of rings from black ABS just to stand the seat off and pull tension on these little blocks. And with the new recesses cut in the polyethylene, no issues with the socket and clearance. Here we're at step 10 or 50 or whatever it is. I have attached the 2 plates with the bearing using this hole I drilled to get to the top side. Got a locking linchpin to stop rotation of the seat. Rough seas, I imagine you don't want to be spinning around and using your legs to stop. And then I cut up 4 pieces of aluminum bar stock, or a flat bar, and these are going to be the retaining clamps under the bench seat. So I'm going to run 3/8 bolts up through the bottom of this plate, and then use everything stainless steel, using stainless steel bolts with some wing nuts to tighten down. This allows me to slide the seat back and forth and locate it anywhere on the bench seat. The 2 seats are installed on the benches. They will locate where you want them and then lock down with the wing nuts. It's locked into position for running mode, and then there's a locking pin that you can pull out to allow rotation when you are not moving, and then the pin can go back in and lock. Interestingly, I had the opportunity to talk to the factory and told them what I was doing, and their comment was, are you planning on stopping the rotation on the bench itself? They're just locked into webbing on the air vessels. And I hadn't thought of it, but the factory being much smarter than me, I thought it over and realized that I do need to stabilize this bench seat so that we don't rotate out of the webbing and end up on the floor. And I have an idea for that, and I'll show you what I've got in mind. Here's what I've come up with for a seat stabilizer or a bench stabilization. I have used some 3/16 by 1 inch mild steel. I wasn't able to find any stainless at this point. That's a further hunt. And just made it into an angled C bracket. I've temporarily tacked it into the floor with short self-tapping screws and into the seat as well. So with that in place, the whole bench is stabilized. It won't rock or come out of the webbing pockets. The seats are complete with a metal brace attaching the bench to the floor. It's been powder coated for durability in the environment. Both are ready to go.